Welcome, everyone. Um, I'm always struck by the Gatan opening the sutra, the the Dharma, incomparably profound, profound beyond compare, right, and rarely encountered. You know, now we see it, hear it, receive, and maintain it. So, how rarely is that encountered? Melanie, you want to tell us about HEB?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's been in my family since I was a little girl. We actually knew the Butts. Their last names are Butt. And we took a lot of pleasure out of that as kids. That's people would have the last name as Butt. Um, but but they're a great company. I believe they're Baptists. They're
Can,
pretty.
So, can you, for a little bit of context, talk in your Texas accent? And not everybody knows that HEB is a major grocery store in
And
Texas in the South, right?
John Robert.
Yeah, they're a wonderful grocery store, and they're people centered. This entire time during the pandemic, they have helped my mother right and left. It's like whatever she needs, they get the groceries either delivered or available to her. And if people have any kind of financial difficulties, they take care of it for them. I mean, it's literally a company that just cares about its people and whoever comes into the doors. So very moving, very moving.
And John, you're there in Texas. Number one, how are you doing? And number two, any HEB perspective?
um, so I grew up going to the Frio River, and there's a Baptist encampment up there, and it's owned or run by the Butts, and that was my grocery store growing up. Um, yeah, and I'm doing fairly well. I'm getting a little stir crazy. Been inside a lot the last week.
Did you maintain power and heat in that, or?
Yeah, so I'm up in the Panhandle, not inside the DFW Metroplex where they seem to have a lot of problems in Austin. We had a little rolling blackout for about 45 minutes, and that was about it where I am. But it was just so cold. It was more comfortable staying inside.
Yeah. Yeah. And John reminded me last week when I started out going, what glorious weather. What an amazing few days is that our personal experience is not always everyone else's experience, which was a good reminder, John. So thanks. So yeah, HEB, a big grocery concern in Texas, and I believe they may extend a little bit beyond Texas, but and the founders and owners, and it's still privately held, the Butts. Um, and, this Dharma rarely encountered, right? So I think everybody here probably opened at least the newsletter that went out on Thursday. And there was a story, it was a story passed on to me through a colleague that works at Holdsworth Center, which is a nonprofit formed by the Butts. And the Holdsworth Center is a nonprofit that is dedicated to improving public education in the state of Texas. And they've built the Holdsworth Center, a whole campus, and they bring together principals and teachers from all over the state for trainings. And I've had the great privilege of being part of delivering some of those trainings. But again, rarely encountered, except that it's always here to receive, maintain, see, and hear. If we just do it, this is all around us. And I recognize in that post too, there were some interesting things. The person posting it, obviously great love of country, saying this is the America that I love, right? That so much is being said negative about the country and the people in it, but here we are, and this is the land that I love. Using very patriotic language, which for one reason or another is often identified as the language of the right. Just like flying the flag is, become over time a symbol of the right or being a conservative, and yet the flag in this country allows us actually to practice Buddhism as we see fit and to speak our minds on the left or the right or the center. I've often thought it would be interesting if everybody embraced the flag, because it would remove the positionality out of it. At Santa Monica Zen Center for a while, when things were going wonky, I deliberately put the flag back up. Everybody pretty much understood that my politics, if they started anywhere, would start from left of center. And I thought, well, let's just hang the flag, because those people involved in the practice on the far right would hang the flag proudly and say this is all about this country and this freedom. So anyway, I thought that was interesting about the post too. This land that I love, and the positionality in it, but mostly, or the perceived positionality in it, the mostly just that wonderful story of a grocery store with hundreds of people in it, and the power goes out in the middle of the afternoon, and what do you do? What do you do? Do you ask everybody to leave their carts in their place and leave? Or do you ask them to come to check out and you manually check them out? Or do you have them come to the checkout stands? And I did think it was interesting. They asked if you had any alcohol, because the only thing I can presume there is that they weren't going to give you free alcohol, which is, just interesting to know. But they sent people on their way and told them to drive safely and didn't charge hundreds of people for those groceries. And a little follow-up. So there's HEB being Bodhissatva, right? HEB just making an on the choice. They lace that store, making a decision on the spot that this is what our service looks like. This is what our service looks like. This is how it manifests. This is not a mission statement on paper. This is how it manifests. Now, John H., who wrote the original Facebook post, I read a follow-up interview with him, is that he contacted HEB management after the fact to find out what charities they support. And he was donating the cost of his groceries back to the charities. So, there's an example of also manifesting the Bodhisattva vows and daisy chaining it forward. Daisy chaining it forward. Much in many ways like John Aharoni or any one of us do every day. And I think that's a great opportunity. John and I and Lori and Sharma and Mel and other people were practicing in the early days as young practitioners, or early practitioners at least, together, and you take the training, and then what do you do with it? What do you do with it? I'm hoping soon we get a chance to hear from John on that point. So it's a little warming up of that ground. I mean, as you know, this to me is of the supreme importance. How do we receive and maintain these teachings? Gata, in opening the sutra, sutra comes, the word for sutra is the same as suture. So the hello kitty, the suture or stitching through time of these teachings from student to teacher, and student to teacher, and Sangha member to Sangha member. And then in opening the sutra or the teachings, we're in a way opening up the stitches and climbing in, and then we stitch it back together. Now this goes all through time, from Shakyamuni all the way down through each of us. So in just a simple chant, there's kind of everything in there. And got done opening the sutra. Now we hear it, receive, and maintain it. May we completely realize. How are we going to realize it? What is our relationship to those stitches through time and the stitches of the teacher? So I hope you enjoyed the HEB story. On the student and teacher and how do we do this and what is our personal responsibility in all of this, I wanted to turn to case 4 in the Blue Cliff record, bundle and all, sometimes called Tokusan's bundle. The introduction: under the blue sky in the bright sunlight, you don't have to point out the east or define the west anymore. But under the conditions of a particular time, it is still necessary to give medicine according to the illness. But tell me, is it better to let go or to hold still? The case or example itself. And listen, there's a lot in here, and it's kind of a fun story and very instructive, I think, anyway, because I've been here, done that on all sides. Example: Tokusan went to Isan. Carrying his bundle with him into the teaching hall, he crossed back and forth, east to west and west to east. Looking around, he said, "Nothing, nothing," and immediately went out. Secho added the comment, this is after the fact, "Exposed." When Tokusan reached the monastery gate, so he went back and forth, right? Nothing, nothing, walks out. He's on his way out. He gets to the monastery gate. He said, "Still, it won't do to be hasty." So he went back to meet with Isan properly. As Isan sat there, Tokusan held up his sitting mat and said, "Teacher." Isan immediately reached for his fly whisk. Tokusan immediately shouted and strode out brusquely. Secho adds the comment again, "Exposed." Tokusan turned his back on the teaching hall, put on his straw sandals, and left at once. That evening, Isan asked the assembly leader or head monk, "Where is the newcomer who was here earlier?" The assembly leader said, "At that time he turned his back on the teaching hall, put on his sandals, and went away." Isan said, "Hereafter, this lad will build a grass hut on the summit of a solitary peak and scold Buddhas and revile Zen masters." Secho adds the comment after that. He adds frost on top of snow. Okay, so we've got Tokusan. Walking back and forth through the Buddha hall with his bundle, east to west, west to east, and he goes, "Nothing, nothing." In some translations, he says, "Moo, moo," and then walks out. Okay, so a couple of things here. There are protocols. Just like when you come in for an interview and you go, "Hi, my name is Ken and my practice is," or, when I'm walking into Dokusan with tension, I bow at the threshold, get down on the cushion, bow and say, "My name is Shiro and my practice is." Okay, there's a formality, and I don't show up in Dokusan out of robes, or my robes all akimbo, right? So the very fact that Tokusan is carrying his bundle, which means carrying his robes all in a bundle like he's been traveling, and strides into the Buddha hall, or the teaching hall, and walks back and forth, pretty much interrupting the flow of everything, and announces nothing, is breaking every bit of protocol that there could possibly be. Now, on one hand, nothing is very accurate. There's nothing to gain and nothing to be given. And I know this is one of the confounding things, or maybe it's not, but I as teacher here actually have nothing to give you, no thing, right? And you have nothing to attain. And yet we work together and try to reveal our true nature and the Dharma and the incomparably profound. Okay, so on one level, nothing, looking around and going, there's nothing here, is accurate. And yet, we can be like HEB and have a mission statement, and when push comes to shove, if we don't let people walk out the door without paying, that enlightenment, that stance, means nothing. And so when you look into the backstory of this a little bit, Tokusan had, this was early in his process, but he had attained some enlightenment, and he was all full of it. He's like, I got it. I got this. And so he walks into Isan's place of practice, right? Melissa, host and guest. He walks in, he's the guest, and Isan's the host, and he's basically just gone, you got nothing for me. Well, we also know that if we hang on to enlightenment, or try to hang on to this notion of enlightenment, it quickly becomes unenlightenment and becomes stinky Zen. And all of a sudden we're just walking back and forth, throwing our weight around and walking out. Now, the interesting part where this koan goes next is he leaves. He gets to the monastery gate. Now, I suspect each of us have been at that monastery gate at some point on the way out. I know I have been. He has the presence of mind to go, wait a minute. Not so hasty, Tokusan. So he's speaking to himself when he says not to be so hasty. I'm paraphrasing now. Okay, but he's speaking to himself. Wait a minute, Dan. Wait a minute, Shiro. Where are you going? What are you walking out on? Okay. So we might be working on a koan, or we may just be hitting a wall in our life, and it's like this Zen stuff, there's nothing here. This is not working for me. Who is this Shiro guy anyway? And we head out the door. But Isan catches himself and says, well, maybe I shouldn't be so hasty. And so then, as the koan is told, he goes back to meet with Isan in proper form, which means he suited up, right? He got in the robes and bows at the threshold. And, what about the teacher? It's interesting, Isan, who was waiting there, who was sitting there. I mean, Isan's there in the teaching hall. All this drama is going on. The teacher is just there. He's just there. Let's see how this plays out. So Tokusan comes in and he's like, now here I am. And he pulls out his sitting mat, and Isan reaches for the whisk, maybe to hit him. We don't know. Tokusan decides, no, I'm not getting caught in this. I said I'd come back, but no, and he bolts again. He heads back out. And Isan lets him go. Doesn't send anybody after him. He puts on his sandals and he leaves the monastery. He really leaves this time. Isan goes on teaching. Isan goes on teaching. You turn the Zoom on again, no matter what happens. The total of 5 people up at Yokoji keep the lights on through an entire year of having almost nobody there. So the role of teacher, whether it's Shiro or Tenshin or Yoshin or Maizumi or yourselves, is to stay there, no matter what the drama is, whether it's your drama or somebody else. Interesting enough, then Isan asks the head monk later, what happened to that dude? Now, do you think Isan really doesn't know what happened to him? So this is just another little interesting nuance in here. He's really testing the head monk. And the head monk answers very simply, he put on his sandals and he left. So the head monk probably, now I'm making this up because none of us were there, but probably later the head monk was like, oh, that's not what he was asking me. That was a teaching question. It was not like, where did he go? It's like, what happened? What did you see? And sometimes we see that the person or ourselves put on the sandals and walked out, and sometimes we see something deeper. So there's conjecture at this point, but you can imagine that head monk later going, oh, wait a minute, maybe there was more to that question than not. Because Isan answers without really acknowledging, or responds without really acknowledging that answer. He says, someday this lad will go to the top of the mountain and scold Buddhas and revile the Zen masters. What's happening here? Is that a criticism? I mean, here's this guy walked in rude back and forth and then came in like, here I am in my robes, and he walks out again and he leaves for good. Isan actually is acknowledging Tokusan's potential and his true nature. He's saying, this one someday will be a great teacher, and no one will be able to match him. What an act of prajna and heart. To hold that ground and to hold that center, to hold each of us in that most positive place of who we truly are, the HEB in all of us. And that's really where Isan is here. Someday. He's got some work to do. He's got some work to do. That Shiro has some work to do for certain. But someday, because that Buddha nature, that potential, that Dharma incomparably profound, can be seen, heard, maintained, and received. So, why all of this? Because many of us have a student-teacher relationship. That's my role at the moment in all of this. So we have that with each other. And sometimes you'll be at the monastery gate, and sometimes you'll be sitting on the cushion. I remember once I walked into Dokusan with Tenshin and just walked in and sat down. And, Dokusan's a pretty cool guy. I like him. We get along well. And he just said, bow. I don't know if I got the tone completely right, but it was, it was just bow. And I was like, oh shit, and I got back up and went back to the threshold and started over. Because that's the form, that's the suture, that's the respect to Shakyamuni, to the practice. To Tenshin, yes. To Roshi, yes. But Roshi there is manifesting the Dharma, the teachings. So there's that student-teacher thing going on, right? And I don't ask for that so that I feel good about myself. And Tenshin, I don't think, needs me to bow to him to feel good about himself. God, I hope not. Right? It's really keeping those sutures, keeping that net in good shape throughout time. But more important than that, and this is a point I really want to make, is don't walk out on yourself. There will be times when you're like, I got it. And you're all full of bravado and walking back and forth through your life, strutting through it like, I got this. At some point, remember to stop at that gate and turn back around and bow to yourself, to your true nature. And then really look at how this Dharma, these teachings are going to manifest when the power goes out. And it's always there. It's always there. We had a fender bender on the 2 recently, and the guy we bumped from behind, which puts us at fault, obviously, this older gentleman, and he really had no clue of what was going on. And it took quite a while to kind of even get him to understand like that we should probably exchange information. And I'm telling you, the thought ran through my head. There's no damage to his car. There's no damage to our car. He's okay. I could just drive away. This would be a lot simpler to just drive away. And the fact that we didn't drive away and the highway patrol showed up a few minutes later is costing us a few $1,000s over a few years, right? Because of the way insurance works. And yet, law or no law, robes or no robes, Shiro or Dan, in the end, I just couldn't drive away and leave this guy sitting on the side of the road. I just couldn't. It wasn't money or no money. I just couldn't. Now, there's no saintliness in that. I'm just pointing out that these choices are always there in front of us. You'll have several small HEB moments during this day. I guarantee it. Either with yourself or with somebody else. So, don't walk out on yourself. It's the act of supreme prajna and heart to hold yourself as the one who will sit on the mountain and establish a great teaching and manifest, receive and maintain the Tathagata's true meaning. It's a great gift, So be the teacher, be the host and the guest. And never give up on yourself. Never. And when you do, catch yourself and turn back around. Because you will. Anyway, I think that's probably enough weaving together of things, but it's an interesting koan. Yeah, I think I'll just leave it there. Maybe we'll cover the verse another time. I'm more interested in any thoughts or comments or questions you have. Anything I left completely unclear, just go ahead and ask away. But, we, and I mean each of us on the screen, and Lori who's not on the screen, really our promise to each other is to be there for each other, right? and to hold each other as that enlightened, awakened one. You know, when we see somebody heading out the door, sometimes you grab them and pull them back, and sometimes you just sit there and keep the door open. And that's for each of us. All right. I think that's the third time I said I'll stop.
Dan?
Yes, Melanie.
I just wanted to share one other thing about HEB, just as a company. If you guys are interested, you can look up a Texas Monthly story about one of the people who work for HEB. His name is Justin Noakes. And speaking of practice and prep and taking care of Sanga and being the teacher, this guy has been planning for the pandemic since 2005. And other companies in Texas have been following. HEB has, openly given their protocol for dealing with, how to run businesses during the pandemic, and they've helped other people in Texas make that transition during this time to keep businesses open. So, I mean, just the thought of that in terms of taking care of people. I mean, this company has been planning for decades prior to this pandemic to be prepared for a pandemic. And to me, that's just, really taking the human element into business. And then openly giving those procedures out to other companies to help them stay afloat. So, amazing company. And I just wanted to share that. And you can read the Texas Monthly stories, and it just gives you hope for how people do things.
Do you remember the title of the story or another key?
Let's see. I think it's just before that. Let's see. It's Texas Monthly, inside the story of how HEB planned for the pandemic.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Mel.
Yep.
I have a thought. There's so many good nuggets in there, Dan. Thank you. But something that stood out to me is when you were talking about how it's the teacher's job to just show up, no matter what's happening. Your commitment is to be there, whether the students are walking in and out, whether you want to be there or not. You're just there. And it made me think of how, as a Zen student, that's a large part of the practice too. It's like you show up for Zazen, even if you're exhausted from the night before and you have a big, work thing to do that one day. The practice is you just keep showing up. And that's something that I really love about Zen training, is that it's like the long game, like it's about having this foundation of being committed to something, whether or not you feel like it in the moment. And so, yeah, I don't know. I just think that that's a beautiful part of what we do. And so that stood out to me in what you said. And and I love the idea of what do you do when the lights go out? Like that's the other piece of our practice too, is what do you do when things get hard? How do you respond in tough situations? That's when it really comes through. All the sitting and all the commitments. That's when it kind of shines, I think. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Melissa.
I agree. I want to I want to kind of follow that same track with you. That's so great. I mean, look, we all have our shadow moments. Like how many times a day do we have a shadow moment? I mean, that's why we have a practice, because it's like a guidepost that you go back to. It's like, oh, I get it. These patterns are showing up again. What the hell? I got to go back and figure it out. I mean, it's just part of being a human. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot better than always running, because, eventually you got to go back to what is, you got to face it. You got to deal. So yeah. And the teacher's always there, as you say, the teacher's always there in you and where your teacher sits. That's what I got.
Teacher.
Well, my mom actually fried an egg. She had no electricity. She fried an egg over a 40-minute period on a cast iron skillet and candles. And I was on the phone with her. I'm like, Mom, what are you doing? And she's like, well, it's just kind of exciting watching the thing get cooked.
That's kind of a new kind of the sous vide egg.
That's so ridiculously Texan.
That's amazing.
I don't know if you know, Mel, but I spent 2.5 years in Dallas. I finished high school there, actually. Yeah, it's a great state, funny state. Anyway. Some good people. Anybody else? Ken.
Good morning, all. Aloha kakahiaka. I did see I did see the story on your newsletter, Dan, but I had also seen it earlier on the internet. Someone else had posted it.
Yeah.
Someone who was, I guess, the person who was actually pushing the cart wrote a little story.
Yeah.
And put it on the internet.
Yeah, that's
and it
what
just brought to mind one of my favorite CEOs and companies of all time, which is Yvon Chouinard in Patagonia in Ventura, California. I don't know how many years ago, 20 years ago, he wrote his business missive called Let My People Go Surfing. And he laid out the template. He gave the world the template of how a national concern can be a good neighbor, how we can have childcare for in its building, how it gives people time off for their whatever cause moves them. Breaking down dams, bringing the salmon back to the rivers, reforestation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this HEB story just brought that to mind, that there are businesses, not just here, but I'm sure around the world, who actually have a hand in their communities. So to me, it was another shining example, another star up in the sky that you can look at and go, wow. So yeah, what a great story. And forget the pandemic, forget about the storm. It's just, this is what they do, period. Yvon Chouinard has many foundations. 1% for the Planet is one of them. And I'm sure HEB probably belongs to that, And so it just reminded me again that, like you mentioned, the suture, the thread, the sewing, and what's in each pocket of the thread? Well, it's another pearl.
Yeah.
It's another of Idra's pearls, and HEB is shining brightly. So, I mean, it's a great story. And yes, Mel, I've been seeing your missives about your mom and family in Texas, and wow, it felt dire there for a little bit, but I'm glad she's okay, and I'm glad Texas is okay for that matter, and I'm sure Austin stayed weird regardless. So there you go. Thank you.
And Ken, not to lionize you too much, but one thing with these stories, it's easy to start iconizing or idolizing these companies,
Mm-hmm.
But you, in your own practice as a healer, as a massage therapist, Reiki, Lomi, and then your recent work with yoga, are doing the same thing, you don't have to be a multi-billion-dollar corporation. In fact, the point here is exactly the opposite, is that it's for each of us and easily within our capability just to pay this whole thing forward, to continue the stitching in our everyday lives.
Mm.
And I'm looking at everybody on the screen here, and everybody on the screen is in some way doing that. We could go through one by one, but it's just, each of you know, you know. And you have your days when you don't want to do it, right? I mean, I woke up this morning so tired, I'm like, this is not fair. I haven't been drinking. I feel hungover. This is so totally not fair, you know? And here we are. So thank you all for being here, because, you bring me back. And so part of it is exactly what Mel said, is just showing up. Melissa, Kazumi. So thanks, Ken. Thanks for all you do, Ken. John.
I'm in Oklahoma, and a lot of our guys came in from Texas. And I guess I've been in the shit for the last couple days. And I just want to thank you guys, because I wouldn't have made it. And you guys are so precious, and this was what I needed to hear. So I'm through, heading to the airport soon. But it's good. It's good. And I sound like a crazy, incoherent fool.
No,
but thank you.
Thank you, John, for being in Oklahoma and working with your team and everything you do. Thank you. You going to be with us next weekend?
I just want to get home right now.
Okay, all right. Well, you do that. You get home. We'll talk later.
Let's see if the kids, let me breathe when I make it. But yeah, I think so. And then I'm back here in a couple weeks, so we'll see.
All right, John. Thank you very much for being here and for sharing. Everybody get that? You get your role in what just happened here?
Yeah.
Really take that in. Really take that in. Because that's the job. It's not my job. It is my job as one of us. But it is, look what we've done. This is the net. This is the Sanga that holds John while he's on his way home and held him through the week and the weekend. It's big. Anybody else? And it's little. It's as little as showing up. Click on a Zoom link, Sit zazen. One reason I wanted to do this week is sometimes we have this tendency to separate our practice from our lives, oddly. It happens where we okay, I've got all this stuff I'm doing, and oh yeah, I'm going to go do Zen. And then I'm going to go back to all the stuff that I'm doing. It will serve you well to collapse the two of those and just see it as always sewing the sutras, always opening the sutra. Not hold them separate and distinct. When I started my practice, it was great because I could hide in anonymity and just sit zazen. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody had any expectations. And then I could go back to my real life and be a jerk or whatever. You know, over time, there's a lot more strength in collapsing those two and just having it be the foundation and be your life, so that this gata and opening the sutra is not just a bunch of words. I mean, wow, this is profound. And it's not always encountered, but I'm going to see it. I'm going to hear it. I'm going to receive it. I'm going to maintain it. That's who I am. Anybody else? Got me going. Thanks, John. Here comes Sharma.
Yay.
Hi, everybody. So I set an intention to collapse both when I go in to talk to my son who's 16 and should be attending to, in my opinion, certain things in his life, because developmentally, I think it's important because he's going to go on in this world. And I don't know how to do that better than I do that now. And it's not, I mean, he represents more than just him, obviously, because there's challenge there. But that challenge to me is, yeah, it's just always in my face. So I am really open to suggestion.
Yeah.
In dealing with a teenager, doing Zoom school, and who hates school.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. And, you know, I was also thinking this morning, it's like, wow, the form and the usual format is koan, and not everybody's working on koans, and there's things about the practice beyond or preceding koans. And yet, Sharma, they can be really fun because, you know, you just got Tokus-san there striding back and forth with his bundle, you know, and you can look right into this koan and go, how do I be Isan?
Okay.
You know, how do I show up? How do I hold this space? Because he's going to storm out and say, I hate you. You don't know anything. I wish I wasn't your son. You know, and your job then is to be Isan. And to go, someday that lad is going to sit on the top of a mountain and be untouchable. That's who I see. That's who I love. And it takes practice.
I do appreciate that. I don't know what my job is in terms of, I mean, the only thing I guess, and this is my question, is I can say what I need to say to him, and he then does whatever he wants with it in terms of his studies and school.
Yeah,
I mean, that's all.
Yeah, what alternative is there? I mean, like, we can come up with stuff, but no matter what we come up with, what you just said is true. And it's really hard. I mean, Lori and I have been through that. Anybody on this call that's a parent has been through that. You know, you try to set the context, you try to point the way, you try to teach what you can teach, but the fact of the matter is, you know, other than locking somebody down, and even that doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
You know, even that doesn't work. So hold that ground and be as clean as you can be. You know. And that does not, you know, and that look, the other mistake we made is that this is all love and compassion, so we go soft. You know, it's not, it's holding that ground.
Right.
Holding that space. But always knowing who he is. God, I haven't seen him in years.
As a parent, I've learned one important thing. And it might help, it might not. But as a parent, I learned by being confronted to be teachable. And I leave it at that.
Galen,
Thank-
sorry, didn't mean to cut anybody off. Galen, then Marsh.
Yeah, thanks. Years ago, 35 years ago, when I first got sober, my son was about the age of yours, Sharma. And I was on this pipeline job out in Moreno Valley, and I had a 1 day at a time sticker on my truck, and the boss, that was just the crustiest old devil you ever met in your life, got me in a pickup truck with him. He turned around and said, "What does that 1 day at a time mean? Are you a damn drunk?" And I said, "Well, sir, yes, I guess I am, but I got sober and this, that, the other thing." He grinned at me. He said, "I am too. And I've been sober for 35 years. And so he and I started talking, and I told him about my life and what had led me up to this place and how much trouble I was having with this teenage son that I had. And he told me two things that I remembered forever. He said, "Well, let me just tell you two things. The first one is, it sounds to me like that boy has been really patient with you throughout these years.
True.
And maybe it's time for you to be a little patient. And the second thing is, teenagers are absolutely worthless." For you to put him in a cage in the backyard and just throw him a hunk of meat every couple of days. Teenagers can't remember their name 2 days in a row.
So true. That is just
So
beautiful.
true. Right. It just rang really authentic in my chest. I don't envy you this place.
Try 24/7, 24/7.
Oh, yeah. I'll say this, my son turned 50 this year, and I was just, his dog died yesterday, and it was kind of the family dog, and I started thinking about what an incredible stand-up guy he is, how he treated that little animal for the last 2 years, how he has taken care of his mother, who is, has trouble with short-term memory and all. And then his wife or his partner is, her whole family it's been like a Holocaust. Her mother died, her brother died, her sister died, and her father was stuck in Mexico with COVID, and how he has just, been there through all of that for them in ways that make me stand in awe of his consistency and his principles. It changes.
Wow.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Galen.
Thank you, Galen.
Thanks for being part of this Sanga, sir. Marsh?
I think that what Galen said really kind of covers it, in terms of teenagers. My life experience was that my husband died when my boys were 11 and 14, and they had some very angry teenage years. And I was really, until Arthur came on the scene, unable to handle it. So the best advice that I can give is the same as Galen gave, which is take the long view. Your life and his life track together, and things will improve.
Thank you. So helpful, all of this. I really appreciate everyone. Thank you so much.
I just want to add in one thing really small. I've been having a really hard time again with my dog going to the bathroom in the house, even though he's already been potty trained. And my friend told me the other day it's because he's a teenager, not because you're a bad dog, mom. And that works for me. She's like, it'll pass. So I'm throw it in.
Perfect.
Sharma, I just want to say, I know you're up against it. I just know before you even said anything, I just know because I remember that year, and it's those years, they're really challenging, and you can always call me.
Well, Lori, thank you. That I may take you up on it. Thank you so much.
Please do. Please do.
All right. Well, we're at about time, but I don't want to cut anybody or anything off. Anybody? Anything else from anyone? Winston, I can see you thinking. You good over there?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm just taking it all in. Just so I'm good. Yeah.
Good.
Still dealing with what I talked about with you on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Hang tight. Hang tight and sit.
All right, here we go.
All right, we'll ring this out.
Sentient being.